Hey, James. Good to see you. Thanks for joining me.
Hey, Dave. I am glad to be here. This is nice. Be nice to catch
Yeah,
up and talk a little bit.
joining me from the other end of the country. Well, today my guest is James Sample, a longtime friend, a dual citizen of Canada, the United States. James and I go way back, and a little known fact is that my son James is this is the namesake for my son. So it's great to interview you. Also, you're a digital designer, creative motion designer. You're going to explain all that to me. I know I'm not introducing it correctly, but I know you're a storyboard designer too. So we'll talk a little bit about that. But um, yeah, joining me from the state of Washington, right out near Seattle.
Yeah, we live on a little peninsula northwest of Seattle called the Olympic Peninsula. So beautiful views of the Olympic mountain range, and very close to the ferries that take you to Seattle or to Victoria, Vancouver Island. Um, Real destination place. Hoping to get you and Lori up here at some time.
Yeah, looking forward to that. We got to make that happen. I was trying to think. You've lived in a lot of places. I think I was going to introduce you as a vagabond. I didn't want to make you sound like you were like always unemployed when I when I said that. But I was trying to think of all the places you've lived. Of course, you started out in Canada, and then Erie, where you and I got to know each other real well.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
Newfoundland, Cape Breton Island. I know you came back to Erie at one point. You were in North Carolina, Phoenix. Well, you were in Phoenix. I didn't get that in the right order. I know I've got that messed up, but
Yeah,
been
that
a
was
lot of
pretty close.
places.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yep, that's true. Yeah, kind of moved to Erie twice. So moved down to North Carolina, um, and then from there we went. We we were in Erie previously when we first got married, um, and from North Carolina we went to. We always wanted to move to Seattle and live on a boat, and so we thought that would be cool. We had never even been to Seattle. But love coffee, love Starbucks, and thought uh, Raleigh's a little hot, and so maybe it would be nice to be somewhere a little cooler. And we ended up actually buying an Airstream, and we drove it across the country, up the coast of the West Coast, and spent maybe a little less than a year living in it, and mostly hanging out in Central California, Southern California. Beautiful, seeing some really neat spaces on our way up to Washington, and we just bought a house up here, and we've been here mostly ever since.
That's
For
cool.
about 5 years now or so.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I have a
beautiful area.
business associate I work with who actually went from Washington. Now he lives in Dayton, Ohio, but he spent an entire year just overlanding. So they had the tent on top of the back of the truck, and
Yeah.
kind of jealous. I mean, it's neat to kind of break out, do something cool like that. So you didn't end up on the boat ever? Did you ever get on the sailboat at
We
all?
It's funny. We actually toured some of the decks. We live close to a town called Port Townsend, and we were walking on one of the harbor marinas one day, and we talked to this guy, and this guy who's got this beautiful old wooden boat, because this is really a wooden boat capital of the West Coast. This is where a lot of the craftsmen that work on wooden boats are for this coast, and so it's kind of a mecca. They have a wooden boat festival here every year. So I've heard of Port Townsend all the years that I lived in Erie and other places. If you ever subscribe to those magazines, Wooden Boat Building, and they all have the back of the magazine artisans that are, a lot of them are up here in Port Townsend. So this gentleman who is working on his boat told us about a free boat that someone was giving away in Orcas Island, and so we thought, well, that sounds like a great opportunity. We've always wanted a boat, so we went up and actually met this gentleman and his wife, who live on an island outside of Orcas Island, past Anacortes, and it was a beautiful ferry ride to get all the way up there. And we love this old John Alden classic sloop that was built in the 1950s, just something out of a movie. And it was sitting outside of his house on a dock, and it was in bad condition, but he had done a lot of work to it and just needed to kind of move on and part with it. And so we took it on for, modest amount of money. We didn't put a lot of money into it. And we did kind of live on that on Mondays in Seattle when my wife Denise had to work in Seattle. And so there was the inside was completely gutted. So I think my office, I was working remotely at the time, and I sat on one of those porta johns as my seat, my office seat, and I think I Jimmy rigged my Mac, my iMac up somehow to be able to work. So it sounds glamorous, at the same time it was fun just to kind of be in the middle of everything. So yes, we did get a small window to have that boat experience.
Yeah.
When
Did
COVID
you?
hit, we did sell it, unfortunately,
Uh,
and couldn't hold on to. We had to go to Arizona for a couple of years, take care of some family matters, and so it was just the logistics weren't there to practically um, keep it. And so we actually sold it to a shipwright and somebody who actually could restore it, which it properly needed. And he told me he'd give me a ride one day once it was done. So I have to follow up and see if he's done now restoring it.
yeah. So if you go back through my interviews, one that I did on this last year was with Bobby Sessions, and he's a fellow I worked with out of Cleveland, and he does sailboat racing. So that's
Yeah.
on my list too. He's promised to take me out sometime in the summer, and we just didn't. Too busy last year, so I'm gonna have to hit him up again. But yeah, I seem to remember somebody talking me into buying a book about building model boats once. I don't know.
Yeah.
So,
I've got it up on the
so
shelf
is
right
it
here.
what was that Dynamite Payson? Was that the
I
is that
have
the
it right
name?
here.
Yeah,
Yeah, we both bought the book, How to Make Model Ships, which is much better than the full scale versions of
yeah,
boats, cost wise. And I think
yeah.
the lure for us was that you could just plane the wood down and you could make these models, and we always wanted to do that. I think one day we probably will. We never did, but there's
Yeah,
still
it's
time.
still on the list. It's still on the list. Yeah,
It's still
got to
on the
do that.
bucket list.
Yeah,
Make some model ships from scratch.
yeah. Well, I know. I mean, you've. It's kind of funny because you've always sort of been near water, and with the exception of Phoenix and I guess Raleigh, maybe so much. But like you were
Yeah,
up in the Maritimes, up in Newfoundland, and then Cape Breton Island, and that's a beautiful area. Now you're out at the other end, and man, yeah, always worth
yeah,
coming to see you wherever you're at. I mean, every place you've lived has always been pretty cool to visit. So, uh,
it's true.
I'm thankful to have a friend that at least gets around. A lot of people never exit out of their normal small space or small town. So, uh,
Yeah. Yeah, and it's fun, because you've got memories of friends where you were with them in your circle of friends. We've got a nice circle of friends in Erie, but it was fun because I've got memories of you and Lori as well coming up to Newfoundland, and those are new experiences with new people, and that kind of it's nice. It's nice to have that.
yeah,
It's all
yeah,
about,
it
it's all
was,
about the people too.
yeah, that was some great experiences that still remember, even though the pictures were developed on regular film way back then. So.
I
Uh,
remember taking you. I think you and Dale were visiting and taking you through some of the most spectacular scenery, but my heater was gone in my car, and the windshield was completely iced over. I mean, we couldn't see anything. It's actually pretty
I ha-
dangerous, probably thinking
yeah.
back about that driving.
I actually have a picture of that car. I was just trying to find a picture I could show today, and I saw that one. I thought, I don't know if that'll fit in. But yeah, Dale was getting in or out of the car. I'm not sure which, but yeah, it was so cold, and your windows were iced up, and I remember just kind of scratching a little hole just so I could
Yeah,
look and see a little bit of the scenery. But oh well, we had fun. That was a great trip.
that was a
But
great trip.
hey,
Yeah.
so let's talk a little bit about what you've been doing for work. I know that you're on the hunt right now and looking for something to do, some projects. And so, tell me a little bit about uh, your secular work, what you've been doing, and what's that all about?
Yeah, well, I've had a nice opportunity to work with a lot of great people over the last 15 or so years. Um, at a company where I started off as a web designer, um, which is what I kind of got into years ago, and that was back in the days when we built unique websites in Flash, and there was a lot of animation and interactivity, and things have changed so much. Now everything has to conform to devices and has to be responsive, and there's apps to go along with that, and so that has all shifted. And during that process, I've had the opportunity to kind of shift and get into video production, which is something that has been a video content has been such a huge a huge need and such a big blast as a means for people to get content out. Uh, and so I've positioned myself as a motion designer, working for an in-house agency for a financial company, now freelance, and excited about being able to kind of work with different brands and um, different projects where, and a lot of people might not know what motion graphics is per se, but that's,
That was going to be my next question, right?
yeah, it's
You
kind of
say
one of those.
motion. Is motion designer that fancy term for video editing, or does it draw in on something specific about the way you do the editing? So that was my question. How do
Yeah,
you?
that's interesting that you're using the term editing. Well, it could involve editing. There are people who are video editors who
Okay.
kind of craft live action, and they may incorporate graphics. Like you think about a movie starting off, and the movie has a title, and then maybe the logo or the movie title's moving. Those are motion graphics. You think about advertisements you see where um, things are animating. Maybe a character is animating. It's nothing involving live action or the real world. It's all animated. Well, I guess another term that is probably more commonly thought of is animation.
Hmm.
Oftentimes we think about animation, we think about Pixar um, and 3D animation, and what motion designers do can incorporate both 2D and 3D. Um, but that's when we talk about motion design, it's incorporating a lot of what we see statically as graphic design, but making it move. Um, and we use a program called After Effects as the industry standard. So I After Effects artist for the last 15 years, and After Effects is basically Photoshop for video. So you
Hmm.
think about how much fun Photoshop is. I think a lot of people can relate to Photoshop and have maybe used that, and it's fun. But then you can actually stack layers and you can move things in time, and that's really fun. And that's what After Effects is. So it's kind of like Photoshop for the video format, and
Yeah.
so much stuff
So
can be done. Yeah, it's fun.
I know. So I know you like ships, and I know I didn't bring touch on this, but you and I have always kind of had a thing about music, and you've played the guitar a little bit, and we've always enjoyed kind of the talent that goes into the creativity of music. And I know you're a creative person. I mean, that's kind of it just runs in your blood, and it seems like it runs in your family too. Um, so is there a piece of that design work that kind of really draws you, that like some of it that really you really kind of enjoy the creativity part of it? Does that resonate with you?
Yeah, yeah, it does. I think back to when I was very young. My dad has had he was a partner in an architectural firm. He was a fine artist. I spent a large part of my childhood around artists and people in his office, and my dad who um, you know rolls of tracing paper, and I would go over architectural renderings as a kid that they were all working on, and they had graphic artists, and I was just surrounded by people who just always wanted to make things look beautiful and appreciated good design. and aesthetics and how it can communicate as well as beyond just something that looks good. So I guess I was always surrounded in that world, um, and I think that that's why I enjoyed web design when the inception of it came around, where everything was unique. It was almost everything was like an album cover. It was very different. Now things are a little bit more streamlined, and I think that's why I made that shift, because I was able to pack up my creativity bags and kind of take illustration and apply it to this new medium that is up and coming, or has been a mainstay more so, with video, and touch upon my old web roots. There's a lot of web publishing. We still, I think things will come back around where websites and technology is going to be a little bit more immersive and a little more interactive than it is now, which is kind of exciting. Things are never staying the same with technology, but yeah, I think my
Yeah, that's
creativity is back to my childhood.
yeah, that's for sure. And it's really nice. I mean, you know, I guess there's a lot of places where you could get into After Effects, and I know my son James does video editing too, and mostly what he does is for video gamers, and they usually like to put together some kind of reel of their highlights from their games. A highlights reel, I guess, is what he typically calls it. So he kind of almost like a sports highlight reel. He does the same thing for some different gamers, and then lets them publish it on their YouTube channels. So he uses, I believe it's After Effects. He uses, but I have no experience with it. But I guess my point was your background as a, with that longevity going back to, I guess we'll say we've been around since before the internet. Hate to admit that, but that
Oh,
adds
yes.
a lot to it, because you've got that sort of broad flavor to your experience, which I think is really cool. So I'm interested in that. I always like these softwares, and I mean, to get talented with it and everything is a challenge. I mean, obviously you've got lots of time and effort into what you've been doing, but I mean, when you think about is there anything you can tell me about that would be that I might be familiar with if I was to go into some business or see something that would be similar to some of the projects you've worked on?
Yeah. A lot of social media content on Instagram and Facebook. A lot of corporations now will have these small 8-second, 10-second segments. You're flipping through your phone and you see an ad for Mastercard, and the Mastercard, uh, the credit card comes up, and maybe it spins around and turns into an airplane, and the airplane
Hmm.
is opening
Okay.
miles that you can win back by using this promotion. And so it's just a very quick, compelling way to display that content, as opposed to maybe information on a web page, or it takes you to the content where you can apply for that card, or something like that. So I think we've all kind of are familiar with our feeds now that kind of have a lot of this, immersive content in short bursts, and sometimes it can be combined with live action. Maybe there's an actor there and there's an overlay of graphical elements to it. I worked for a financial company who had branches, a bank, um, and often had promotional uh, displays going on, multiple split displays behind the counter, and you almost have these vertical, moving ads now. Instead of a static billboard, you'd have this just small interactive animations that show promotions or offers, and so a lot of what I did was displayed as part of the branding in the branches as well. So we see this video content everywhere, and it's kind of neat where um, in the past things were maybe static, and of course there's a need for static billboards, but
Sure.
things are often moving now a lot. Of course, larger cities have always had giant Trinitron displays as you're going down the highway, but we're just seeing that more and more now in different spaces. we worked on a campaign at the bank that allowed us to have collateral moving in subways in Philadelphia, and just unique places that just really gave you that that blast of that brand, and reuse content and video, and just clever, neat ways that is just up and coming, and just being done more and more.
Yeah, so you've got a lot of familiarity with the marketing side of it, which I don't, you just kind of brought up. We didn't really talk about, but so you were used to working with a marketing team. They would just give you sort of basically a rough concept idea of what they wanted, and then you just go make that happen. Is that how that worked?
Yeah, yeah. It's just, typically in the past, a lot of companies, a lot of corporations would hire an agency, a creative agency, um, and they would come in and they would create storyboards. They would come up with a concept. They'd have copywriters, and they would pitch ideas and execute them, either filming and or creating animated graphics and print collateral. And of course, agencies are still vitally needed. No corporation or company could probably, a Fortune 500 company could have on staff enough to fulfill all the needs from an enterprise standpoint. But we were able to, and you see trends now happening where a lot of companies are having in-house agency retention, where they're hiring um, the marketing people and the experts that can take things from a concept to publish it. So I worked with copywriters, and we would pitch ideas and come up with concepts. I would storyboard it out and bring it up to the bigger team. And of course, we have internal stakeholders that have to buy into sometimes crazy ideas, and no, that's not going to fly. And well, we tried to get away with that, and sometimes do what you want to do. And so you get a chance to experiment with things. So yeah, just the whole gamut of being creative. We had a studio with green screens, and one of the fun projects we got to work on, where we thought to, it was kind of a hit back to those Apple ads. Remember the silhouettes where you had people with iPods on their ears, and you just saw a black silhouette with a solid background, and they were dancing around. So we played off of that a little bit and brought a well, I'm working remotely, so I'm talking to the team back in the studio in Charlotte, North Carolina. And I said, well, what if we brought a treadmill in, and we painted it green, got some green tape on it, and we can have someone walking, and we can kind of do our gestures and the things that we wanted to do for this promotion. And so we just got to have lots of fun with that, and that was a concept that kind of got some popularity, and a lot of people got a chance to be a part of that. And yeah, a little more exciting than
Yeah,
the day to be able to jump in to do some of these creative things, and
yeah,
involve a larger part of a team who maybe are doing different things most of the time.
yeah. I when I worked for my dad, we did some green screen editing, and I learned a little bit about that, the lighting required, and I don't know, that chroma key stuff. During the pandemic, I used the green screen and OBS to filter out the chroma key background and put some backgrounds behind me, just so it wasn't like what was behind me.
Yeah.
And man, sometimes it was just so finicky to try to get the shades of green filtered out and do it just right. And I've heard that green screen stuff, the editing side. Did you actually edit green screen video at all? Because that sounds like a real hardship for some editors, because you've got to really work at all those shades of green, and sometimes it's not quite
Yeah.
clean.
Yeah, there's a lot of, I have, we did do a lot of green screen compositing, chroma key compositing, and often a lot of it is just getting the lighting right, of course, as you know, in this studio environment, and having. I remember bringing iron to work, and ironing out some of the early green screens that we had that were more felt like. I think we started off with a small budget. Often had to use the steamer to kind of get a lot of the wrinkles out. But one program that's really great, which I'm just a big fan of, and a lot of people on the team that I worked on, there was a big camp. A lot of people like Premiere, which is Adobe. It's a part of the Adobe Cloud Suite. That's really the video editing app inside Adobe as products. But then there's Final Cut Pro, which has been around for a long time. They revamped it a number of years ago from the ground up, and Final Cut Pro has great chroma keying built-in tools. I'll never go back to Premiere now, and so yeah, check out Final Cut Pro. It's amazing how fast it is, especially with the new Macs. It's
Yeah,
really a nice job.
I've cheaped out. So when I started doing this video stuff, I started with Corel, and I didn't really like their video editor too much, but I ended up buying. It was like, a perpetual license, so I paid for it. It wasn't too much money. And then and I've been using Power Director now, which for some simple video editing, it feels much more intuitive to me, and I can take some of these videos and do what I want with them in short order. And I actually have Power Director on my Samsung phone too, and it's kind of funny. The capabilities are pretty good, but I know it's nothing like the professionals use. And now you got me wondering which one my son James uses, because it's one of the Adobe softwares, and I thought it was After Effects. He's talked about that, but it might be Premiere. I don't know.
It's so exciting because I mean, when we were kids, I mean, none of the stuff was available to us. I remember asking in grade three. I used to make little flip books, little
Yeah.
animated by just stuff, with little flip books that you can do for a little comic strip. And I wanted for a science project that we had to do for school, I wanted to do frame by frame animation with a camera. And our school had a VTR, I think is what they called it, probably, video tape recorder, analog. Um, and I asked my principal if we could borrow it for a frame by frame animation project that I wanted to do. What 8 or 9 years old, and he didn't let me. I think the equipment was probably pretty expensive,
Oh yeah.
but yeah, but now we just have, music production. We just have all the tools for video and music. You can put an orchestra together. You can do sound design. Um, you can do anything you put your mind to, really, that your mind can think of. We kind of have it now at our fingertips,
Yeah.
within a reasonable amount of investment.
Right. Yeah, I know when my kids were little, we had some digital cameras at home, and they got into the whole stop motion thing with their Legos. They would do some stop motion videos, and so occasionally I'll come across those in my old files, and it makes me kind of chuckle.
Yeah, those are priceless now.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. So, well, hey, I hope that maybe this video and getting the message out, you'll find some new gigs out there, and I'll be happy to tell others about what you're doing. So, you know,
I
it's just
appreciate it.
funny. You got a network today, and there's just so much going on, and everybody's looking for one thing or another. Just the trick for guys like you is making sure that we pre-qualify the leads before we send them your way. So I don't send you something that you don't
Yeah.
want to work on.
Yeah, and it's one of those things too where I think as I'm getting back into the realm of networking and looking for work, you think about just how much visibility we have to what everyone else is doing, and so much talent out there. But at the end of the day, sometimes it's nice to be able to just put yourself out there, because I think uh, we all have something to offer somebody. There's sometimes it's just a matter of matching up the right style or talent that someone has, or just sometimes it's just timing. I know with a lot of industries that like motion design, there's a huge need for it as well. And oftentimes it's the challenge finding people. There's a lot of talent out there. There's a lot of people, but sometimes we're not marketing ourselves. And I'm noticing that's important now.
Yeah, Um, and so much of it, like with social media, it's kind of interesting. And again, part of the reason why, I've been on this journey of trying to do the podcasts. I wish I was doing a few more of these. And it's so much fun to just have conversations with people and really understand. And I think, it's within these conversations that I think the real person is hopefully exposed a little bit. I mean, we can all be a still image in our profile. We can be all the stuff we want to throw in the profile about what we do for a living and all our experience, which I've done too. But once we get on a platform like this and you kind of relax, have a good time, just talk, people understand the kind of person you are to work with. And, you know, a lot of times that's a pretty critical piece of any business relationship, is understanding the kind of person you're dealing with. Are they really interested in me? Are they just out to get a sale? All that kind of stuff. So,
Yeah.
um, I really like that part of social media. I mean, we really are all given a little bit of a platform, to 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 do this. And of course, me interviewing people like yourself, good friends and part of my network, it gets a chance for you guys to also show who you are. And I certainly can attest to, good friend James, you're top notch, and anybody that hires you is going to be satisfied with the work. So that's
I appreciate
that.
that. Yeah,
If I could put in a good word for you.
I appreciate it. Yeah, thanks, Dave. I appreciate you having me. And I think it's, as the older you get, you look back at the people that you worked with, and that makes a difference. That just makes all the difference. You know, we love going to work, and if we can't work with people that want to build us up and help us get to where we need to go, and it's fun to work on projects together and struggles with projects. I think we've all had that, no matter what industry we're in. Sometimes things don't go the way we want. But being there for one another and kind of being able to rely on people and hopefully, looking back and saying, hey, I was there for that person because I wanted them to succeed. I think that's good. That's the kind of person that I've always tried to be. And I kind of I'm proud of a lot of the people that I've worked with. I've worked with a lot of great people, and I know not everybody can say that. A lot of people sometimes are working in volatile environments, and that's unfortunate. And I've been fortunate to not have been in those environments too much. And if I have, those are the kind of environments that if you can't change it for the positive, it's maybe not a good fit for you.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been in the same boat. I think I've had a lot of really professional people I've been associated with in the different jobs I've had over the last 20 years. So it's really cool, and it's interesting you make that point too. One of the books that popped up in one of my friends' posts online was one that's called "The Obstacle Is the Way," and you kind of mentioned this whole concept of working through the challenges. We've all had challenging situations, and I think sometimes after we've been in a situation for a long time, we forget how many challenges we've overcome in that particular role and don't really realize the value of that experience. I think we just kind of chalk it up to like, oh yeah, that's what I do.
That's
And
interesting. Yeah.
it's really super valuable because like it's so much of that you can't get until you've worked through the challenges. And sometimes people are risk averse. They see a challenge and they steer away. And that book, The Obstacle Is the Way, is kind of it's kind of like a guiding light of like, okay, there's a challenge, lean in, right? Like you're going to learn something in this. It's going to be frustrating, but at the end of it, you're going to find something out, and it's going to be beneficial. And it almost seems like the harder the obstacle, um, really the more valuable it is in the long run. And I
That's
mean,
interesting. Yeah,
the
that's
worst
good.
case is at least sometimes it's a good story to tell sometime when you're sharing a drink together with somebody. So,
Yeah, yeah. I had
uh,
that's very interesting. I had somebody who was an intern years ago in web development, and man, he had the best attitude and best work ethic. but he was afraid to do anything. He was afraid he was going to break something. And, I encouraged him, get in there, break it. It's just code. It's fine. No one's going to die. And that's how you learn. Um, and, yeah. And, hopefully over the years, he's embraced that because, a lot of people don't have the work ethic and the drive to kind of want to work hard, and but having both of that, where you want to take risks and then you've got that drive. That's a great combination.
Yeah, yeah, it helps to have both. And everybody's got a different pace and a different drive, but yeah, you can't avoid obstacles. They're going to come your way, and challenges.
I think we have to be
And
reminded of that too from time to time. Yeah, that's good advice.
yeah, it's hard. I say that stuff, and when you're seeing the challenge you're facing, I've had some particularly challenging things I've been dealing with this week work wise, and I just well, in the last couple of weeks, I should say, and I've been trying really hard to remind myself, like, okay, you're going to get through this, and on the other side, you're going to come out with some smarter
Yeah.
ideas, and you're going to be ready for something like this again. So yeah, it's tough to remind yourself in the middle of it, but you know, it's it's definitely true though. I mean, you learn from
Yeah.
experience. Some of the best learning you can get is an experience. Well, it's like, and if you read in these books about a lot of the software companies, in the last 20 years, a lot of them are big on this be quick to fail kind of model where you're trying to actually, like you just said about that intern, you're trying to work towards that failure point, because it's actually at that point when you kind of really make a good assessment, and then you learn, and you keep correcting and correcting and correcting. If you just keep moving and you don't fail, then you're not really learning, I guess, is the idea. So you
Hmm.
know but
Yeah.
we were all conditioned, I think, in high school that every failure was going to lead to ultimate embarrassment.
True.
I don't know. My parents said going to high school was going to be good for you, because you learned to be, you learned your social, you learned how to interact with people. But sometimes I don't think the lessons we learned in high school are the best for us. But we survived.
I'll concur.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man. Well, hey, this has been fun. I think this is longer than probably anybody wants to listen to the two of us talk. But appreciate you coming on. It's been fun catching up, and can't wait to someday get out to Washington.
Yeah. Well, thanks
What
for doing this, and I definitely, you have to come out.
so what's the best time of year out where you're at?
Well,
Summer?
the best time of year is the summer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
most
But
places in the north.
yes, I'm not allowed to say how nice it is most of the year here. There's the connotation that it rains a lot. And I actually live in a little spot it's in a rain shadow. So,
No way.
um, yeah. Well, I mean, I get less rain than maybe Seattle does. I don't get the absence of rain, but definitely rained a lot more on the East Coast than it does here in my little town, which is uncommon to what people think of when they think of
Yeah,
this area, Pacific
that's
Northwest. And of
yeah. I
course,
was
there are pockets of areas around here that get a little more rain. So I'm only speaking from the limited little village that I live in. That's in a bit of a
yeah.
rain shadow. That's my disclaimer for all the people, anyone from Seattle who might text me if they see this. Hey, this is a secret. You're not supposed to tell. On the
Yeah.
East Coast, we get torrential downpours and a lot of lightning. They don't have thunder and lightning here very much, and it's a much milder, misty kind of rain.
Yeah, just sort of a steady rain, huh?
Yeah, a
Yeah,
short spurt. Yeah, you don't get the
I'm
violent downpours very often.
I'm kind of tired of the overcast. I don't live near the lake anymore, and it's a little more sunny here where we're at, just south of Erie. But man, we've had too many stretches of 5, 6 days in a row where it's just overcast, and I'm just like, man, I want to see some sun. So we did have sun today, which was nice, and then we're supposed to have some freezing rain tomorrow. Hopefully, we don't have any challenges getting out and about. So, but hey,
Yeah.
thanks for joining me, and I will wrap it up by saying to others here on LinkedIn, I'm excited to do these interviews. If you're interested, reach out to me. I'd be glad to interview you and share your experience to my network. So looking forward to doing that with many more people. I just gotta get them all scheduled and get everybody on board. So, all right, James. Well, great talking to you.
Thanks,
Have a
Dave.
great night.
You too. Take care.